But imagine if we went to God for forgiveness. We said, Lord, I know that I've sinned. Have mercy on me. What if his response was, okay, I forgive you, but I just want you to know how you've hurt me. That's not your God. That's your mother-in-law. But the problem is Jesus makes it clear in his teaching on the Lord's Prayer, there's no such thing as theoretical Christianity. In other words, one might pray the Lord's Prayer at a theoretical level. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. You could pray that prayer. But when he gets finished, the only part of the prayer upon which he editorializes is the part about forgiveness. He says, when he gets finished, for thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. For if you will forgive men their trespasses, your Father in heaven will forgive yours. But if you forgive not, he will not forgive you, cannot forgive you. You cut yourself off from forgiveness unless you make it practical. In other words, vertical forgiveness depends on the practical reality of horizontal forgiveness. At some point, Christianity quits being theoretical and it becomes practical. You have to actually get in the canoe. The challenge is that we don't want it to apply to us. We don't want to try to figure out how practical that makes it. John Wesley said, I know of no holiness save relational. He used the word social. He said, I know of no holiness save social holiness. In other words, he said you cannot have a holy relationship with God unless you put that relationship into practice socially with people. And Jesus makes it clear that the essence of that falls at the point of forgiveness. That is the hard work of practical social holiness. Forgiveness is not theoretical. It deals with the fabric of every life. It deals with us at a practical level. The forgiveness of releasing debts, of releasing trespasses. Some years ago, I was in a counseling session with a lady. She was a pastor's wife. What had happened was she and her husband had gone through a marital crisis 20 years earlier, a real marital crisis. Basically, which she caused because of her actions. And they had gone through counseling, gone through forgiveness, everything had been fine. 20 years later, somebody on their board found out about it and dredged it up and made a huge deal of it. And it caused such a turmoil in the church that the elders required them to resign. And she said they had no right to that. It was over. It was 20 years in the past. They walked on our private lives. I said, yes, they did. I said, do you ever pray the Lord's Prayer? She said, sure, I pray the Lord's Prayer. Do you pray, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us? She said, yes, I pray that. I said, what does no trespassing mean? When you see that sign on a piece of property, it says no trespassing. What does it mean? She said, well, it means don't go in there. You have no right to get in there. That doesn't belong to you. I said, that's what they did. They trespassed on your private lives. They ignored a no trespassing sign and went in where they had no right to be. She said, that's right. I said, now I want to ask you a question, sister. 20 years ago, did you go in where you had no right? She said, yes, I did. I trespassed. I said, now you have to forgive those people, even the damage they did to your home, to your marriage, and to your husband's ministry. You have to forgive them because you have been forgiven. The reality of the forgiveness that we receive from God, that level of forgiveness must be extended to others. Sometimes we want to make it theoretical, but imagine if we went to God for forgiveness. We said, Lord, I know that I've sinned. Have mercy on me. What if his response was, okay, I forgive you, but I just want you to know how you've hurt me. That's not your God. That's your mother-in-law. God forgives, and He forgives entirely. He forgives without reservation. He doesn't bring it up again. He doesn't punish us. When we talk about forgiving the debts, what we want to do sometimes is we want to forgive at one level, but the debt, to forgive a debt, that's what you owe me. So to forgive the debt, sometimes what we want to do as human beings is forgive the act of what somebody did to us, but we want to get payment on the debt emotionally. We say, I forgive you, but I want to punish you emotionally. I want to remind you of it. I want to hold it over your head. I want to keep you paying on that debt. I've forgiven you, but I want you to know how badly you've hurt me. What if we went to heaven and we went into the throne room, and there's Jesus and St. Paul and St. Peter, and they're in there telling jokes and laughing and having a good time. And when we walk in, Jesus says, there he is, be quiet. That's not heaven, that's hell. And we can turn our own homes and families and marriages from heaven to hell by demanding emotional payment on sins that we say that we are forgiven. But that's theoretical forgiveness. That's not real forgiveness.